Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughn Manor, where it's Wednesday, which means it's Epic Comic Book Wednesday. Every Wednesday, I'll talk about a certain comic book graphic novel or comic book subject. Steve Donoghue, on his channel, will talk about that same comic book graphic novel or comic book subject. It is our world's finest team up that we do once a week. And this week, we're actually talking about a graphic novel from Marvel Comics. Marvel used to do a lot of these where they would have just a graphic novel that would be a standalone story, separate from the comic book. And that's what this is. This is a Fantastic Four graphic novel from Alex Ross. Alex Ross, who is the famed illustrator of Marvels. He did Kingdom Come. He did a bunch of other stuff. He's an amazing illustrator. He's famous for his painting work. But this one he didn't just do the artwork on. He actually wrote it as well. And the artwork in this is different than his usual work in that this artwork is drawn in a more traditional manner. It's not painted all the way through like his normal work is. And so it's interesting for a couple of different reasons. I have to say, right off the bat, that the artwork in this is beautiful. It could be the most beautiful Fantastic Four comic book ever done as far as just the artwork is concerned. It's magnificent. He also does the story in this. The story is not quite as magnificent, but that's okay. One thing the story does is give him lots of opportunities to draw pretty pictures, which he does. He does a great job with that. He also does a great job with the characters in the Fantastic Four. All the characters are spot on. They're all done exactly right. They're all based on Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's original versions of these characters. And yeah, he gets them all. He gets them all right. So that is nice. And so this is well worth picking up just because it's so beautiful. And it is. I mean, you open it up and right away you get this image on the end papers. This is just a really cool, beautiful image of the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, which I should say is my favorite Marvel comic book of all time. I love the Fantastic Four. And so there's a lot about this that I like. You get the origin of the Fantastic Four on the dust jacket, and this is illustrated in his more traditional painted style. The Fantastic Four origin here. Really beautiful job, and it's really cool the way they did that. So we go right into the story where we have a mysterious stranger looking up at the Baxter Building. The Baxter Building is the Fantastic Four's base. They're at the top of a skyscraper. And we start off with our favorite character, everybody's favorite character in the Fantastic Four is the Thing. Lovable Ben Grimm looking for a sandwich in the middle of the night. And look at this great image of the living room of the Baxter Building. You've got this kind of sunken living room from the 1960s. And you've got a very Jack Kirby looking picture on the wall there. It's just beautifully done. And I mean, just the characters are just drawn wonderfully. So as far as the artwork, this is not something we usually see from Alex Ross, drawn artwork in a more traditional style for comic books, but he just does it beautifully. And they find a stranger who has come into the Baxter Building. And they call up Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, and they check him out, and they say, hey, this is a guy that we knew. And this is a character we've seen before in the Fantastic Four, because this comic is actually kind of a sequel to an earlier Stan Lee Jack Kirby comic. I believe it was called This Man, This Monster. I think where there's this guy who imitates Ben Grimm. And you get some flashbacks to that original story where he uses the device which enables him to imitate the Thing. And they have a whole adventure. But this is kind of the continuation of that. It recaps that whole story, so you're up to date. Unfortunately, this is a body of this character, and it's full of these strange creatures which burst out of the body in proper alien fashion. And the Fantastic Four has to try to take all of these terrible creatures out that are infesting the place. And we get a couple really great scenes of the Torch flying around and the Fantastic Four trying to take out these creatures. And there's a cool shot of Sue Storm. Again, Alex Ross is taking his character designs right from Jack Kirby. So Sue Storm looks exactly like the way Jack Kirby drew her. That's her face, the way Jack Kirby drew her, only a realistic version of it. Which makes all of these characters really recognizable. And it's all done in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And like I said, he just gets these characters. You can tell that he's a huge fan of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee's Fantastic Four. And they're determined, and they have to go to the negative zone, because that's where these creatures came from. And so we go down to the chamber where they have the access to the negative zone, which is another dimension where they go through once in a while and have a bunch of adventures. And it all looks exactly the way Jack Kirby drew it. And I love this image most of all, this image right here where they're running and putting on their uniforms. And it's just, he just gets it. He gets these comic book characters. And so they go into the negative zone and are floating around in there looking all cool. And this gives Alex Ross an opportunity to really cut loose with the artwork. And he does a wonderful job drawing these characters in the negative zone. I mean, we get some just amazing stuff here. It's cool. There's Annihilus having dinner. Yeah. It's cool stuff. And so at this point, I'm going to pause and talk a little bit about the story itself, which I will not spoil. There's not too much to this story to spoil, but there's a little bit, I guess. The thing about this story is that the Fantastic Four never seem to be in any real danger. Mostly this is because they have the Invisible Woman with them. The Invisible Woman who, makes a career out of saving the rest of the Fantastic Four from danger anyway. But in this case, they would all be dead without the Invisible Woman, who is the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. But because they have her, and because they have their own powers and their own experience, you never really worry about the Fantastic Four too much in this story. They've got all of this handled. There's one moment which might look kind of grim for half a second, but no, they're never in any real danger. And so there's a villain in this story. There's the villain down there, who is not particularly menacing. You never get this feeling like, oh, this is a first-class villain for the Fantastic Four. Nah. But, like I said, despite that, it does give Alex Ross some wonderful opportunities to draw some really cool stuff and to make some really interesting images. And he does. The artwork, like I said, it's just amazing. And you can just look at it. You can spend a lot of time looking at the artwork in this book because it's really cool. There's just some beautiful work in here. This is the half a second where you think that the heroes might be in danger, but, not really. And so it's basically our heroes' adventures in the negative zone. There's a negative Earth there, which, of course, they're going to visit. You got to visit the negative Earth when you're in the negative zone. And the panel designs and the page designs are interesting. Like I said, he really cuts loose on this. And through the whole thing, the look of all the characters is it's all very Jack Kirby, and it's just really cool. Um, Look at his version of the Thing there. I love his version of the Thing. It looks a lot like Jack Kirby, but it also looks a lot like John Buscema's Thing. And Reed Richards, of course, looks exactly right. They all do. It's just cool. If you're an old-time Fantastic Four fan, this book is a real treat. It's a lot of fun to read if you love these characters, which I do. Fantastic Four was one of the first Marvel comics I ever read. I had a little tiny paperback size comic book that reprinted the first 6 issues of the Fantastic Four, and I read that thing over and over and over again. And when I was a little kid, I grew up too late for the Jack Kirby run, but they were reprinting them. Marvel Comics had a couple comic books that every month would reprint stories from the Silver Age. And so I read all of those stories. I just read them reprinted. And so it's fun to read this comic because Alex Ross, I think, probably had a similar experience to me. You can tell he loves these characters. He respects these characters. These are the characters presented as they should be presented, recognizably as the creations of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's wonderful stuff as far as that is concerned. The artwork is magnificent, and the story is, like I said, you never have to worry about the Fantastic Four in this comic book. They've got this handled, this little adventure in the Negative Zone. But it's well worth picking up, just for the reasons I've said. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool book. Fantastic Four, full circle, graphic novel from Marvel Comics. You should get it. It's awesome if you like the Fantastic Four. Okay, guys. I guess that's all I have to say today. It's a short Epic Comic Book Wednesday today. Usually I go on and on and on, but this is not a particularly long book, and there you go. I will catch you next week. Next week, Steve and I have something very special lined up for Epic Comic Book Wednesday, and I will see you next time.